any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and I'm so thrilled to be here with you this morning. I have to tell you, this is a pre-taped show that we taped about a week and a half ago because this was when we could get together with this guest, and having this guest was so important to me. I wanted them to be on the show forever, and I'm so honored and excited that Shain Neumeier is here with us today. And let me just tell you, this is going to be a really enlightening hour. Pull the chairs a little closer, get the popcorn popping. You know what I'm saying? Because it's really good stuff. So thrilled that you guys are here. Even though we're not live right now, we're premiering the show today for the very first time. So we do want your interaction. We'd love to know your thoughts, your feelings, your questions. And as you interact with us, if you have questions, I will make sure that Shain gets your questions. So please feel free to write the questions in. And our fabulous Chris Desmond is showing you some of the different ways that you can interact with us. I want to remind you that we're live right now on Facebook. We're live, but, premiering live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter right now. So you can be writing in on those platforms. And I will be able to, hopefully, be able to reply as you guys are writing in. But even if for some reason I can't, I will make sure that later on we get your replies. And so write in is basically what I'm saying. And we will for sure get your questions and comments to Shain later. So thrilled about that. Also keep in mind that this show will now be, once it premieres today, will be available as a free download wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to get the audio only version, we encourage you find your podcast platform, however you like it. We love it when you like, share, subscribe, all those things. And you'll notice that if you get the audio podcast, it will come with ads. And we hope that you embrace that. The reason for that is because that is the way that we make it free for you. There is a cost every time. I don't know. It's crazy when you think about it, but there is a cost. Every time you guys download a podcast, there is a cost. And so the way we defray that cost is through the advertising. If, however, many of you have written in and say, Shannon, I take you on my walk. We're in the car with you, and it kind of kerfuffles things when we go to an advertisement. So if you want it ad-free, you can have it ad-free. We tried to find a way that you could have it at a very low cost because that's important to us. So you can go to glow.fm/autism live. And when you go there, it'll be a $5 a month fee that gets you everything we do at the Autism Media Network. That includes Autism Live. That includes Ask Dr. Doreen. It includes Stories from the Spectrum, which, don't forget, that is content that is solely made by individuals who identify as being neurodiverse or neurodivergent. They have different words. And it also includes our things like Let's Talk Movies with Shannon and Moira, and Let's Talk All the Things with Shannon and Rachel. And we have 2 new podcasts that we are currently incubating. We have not unveiled them yet, except to say what the titles are. Autismo y Comunidad, which is the Spanish speaking version of, it's its own little show. It's not a version of Autism Live, but it's its own little show hosted by Gabriela Tessier, who is the morning anchor on Univision. And then also another podcast that we are currently working on right now called Today's Hyperfixation. And that is hosted by the fabulous Atticus Jackson, who is going to be on the red carpet for us at the Ed Asner poker tournament coming up in just a couple of weeks. Our coverage for that, Chris and I will be there producing. I'm so excited that I'm like not on camera this time. Woohoo! Let's see how that goes. But we'll be there producing, but Atticus and Spencer Hart will be interviewing the celebs for us. So that'll be super fun. I hope you guys, we'll try to do a couple of live feeds that night, but most of the interviews we're going to record and then get you the edited version because the red carpet's a little, It gets a little different, and you don't need to see all of that, but we'll tune in. We'll try to get a couple of live feeds out to you guys so you can see a couple of things, because there is that element of fun for that. In any case, you get all of that when you subscribe. If you do the glow.fm and you pay $5 a month, you're getting all of it ad free, or you can subscribe on whatever your platform is that you watch. There are two different YouTube pages though, and two different podcasts. There is Autism Live, which has everything except for Ask Dr. Doreen, which is its own podcast. So we do ask that if you, whichever content you want, make sure you're subscribing to the one that you want. There you go. All right. I always say at the beginning of the show that our mission here is to provide information and inspiration, and that is for that larger autism community that starts with individuals who are themselves on the spectrum, but then it radiates out to include all of the people who love them. I am in that category. I consider myself a proud pony, PONI. That stands for parent of a neurodiverse individual, because those are the words that my son has asked me to use. So those are the words I use. I know it's not everybody's words, but it's the words that he has asked me. So I stay true to those. Oh my gosh, so much. And I want to get to our guest today. But first we have the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We used to just show you, first there was an actual definition, and then we would make fun of it, and then we would show you a working definition that would hopefully help you to get closer to it. I gotta say the definitions have gotten so much better that now I find that a lot of times we're giving you two different definitions so that you can see that there's nuance to these terms. But always the point is to put these terms into your lexicon so that you begin to understand what they are. And I have to be honest with you, when I went to graduate school, one of the things that we were charged with all the time, this was back in the day when we still had, you remember, paper book dictionaries, that I remember all of my teachers and all of my classes saying, don't be afraid to look up words that you thought you knew what they meant, because you're going to find things that are really going to help you to learn more about the world and more about this word, right? So this was certainly true, because while I have heard the term ableism, I don't think I had ever looked it up to see a definition of it, and it kind of took my breath away. So let's take a look at what our first definition for ableism is, and this came to us from oxfordreference.com. So it's Oxford Dictionaries. Discrimination against people who are not able-bodied, or an assumption that is necessary to cater only for able-bodied people. I don't know about you, but that just ripped me to the core on so many different levels. That there are people wandering around assuming that it's only necessary to cater for able-bodied people. Plus, I have issues with this because discrimination, I think, for ableism isn't just against those who are not able-bodied. I think it's also for neurological differences and so many other things, right? So I didn't love this definition, but partially because I don't want to live in the world with this. And I think the reality is that there is some of this. And I hope, like me, that we all want to change this. And the only way we can change it is by putting a spotlight on it. So let's put Oxford to the side and hang on to our feelings of grief that come with this. And let's move on to our other definition and see if this suits us a little bit better. This came to us from Cambridge. So it's dictionary.cambridge.org. Policies, behaviors, rules, etc., that result in the unfair or harmful treatment of disabled people and in a continued unfair advantage to people who are not disabled. But also harmful or unfair things that people say, do, or think based on the belief that disabled people are not as good as people who are not disabled, or that they do not deserve special arrangements that help them to live their lives and be included in society. Now, there's a lot there to unpack, but it makes me want to cry. And it makes me want to cry for a very specific reason, because as much as I dislike this, I am 100% sure that there are times that I have thought something without realizing that it was unfair to someone else. And I have allowed things to continue, sometimes not noticing that that was going to allow an unfair advantage for people who only could do things the way I understood them to be. Think about that for a minute, right? I think that if we're all honest, there have been times when we didn't notice that, hey, wait a second, that's not really fair. And how often on this show do we talk about it has to be fair? So I equally hate this. I hate it. But I have to be honest that I cannot sit here and say that I have never done anything that could be squeezed into this definition. But what it does make me want to do is be better. What it does make me want to do is start to be a little bit more mindful, to be a little bit more aware, and to own up to if I do something and immediately rectify it. I hope that that is the page that we are all on every day here as you join us. Everything's up for discussion. We're happy to have discussions about absolutely anything. However, I do not believe that there is a person watching the show that in their heart of hearts thinks that our kids, our teens, our adults are not worthy of every bit of consideration as anyone else. I don't think there's a person watching the show that thinks that they are better than someone who is on the spectrum. I think for us in our community, I say this all the time, my son's brain is different than mine. It's better. I know that for a fact. And nobody can convince me otherwise. Can I do some things that I can do and other people can't do? Sure, I'm a person. Right? And I'm a unique person. But I will guarantee you my son's brain better than mine. If I had to choose which one of them I would prefer to have, I'd rather have his brain. So, and I know that there's a lot of you out there that feel the same way, right? Our kids, our teens, our adults are amazing people. But that last little part about that people who think that they do not deserve special arrangements that will help them to live their lives and be included in society, I certainly have seen that across the board with my son, times when people were like, why do we have to pay for special education in our taxes? You should take care of your own kid. Why do we have to why do we have to get rid of these stairs and put in a ramp? I feel bad for people who feel that way because they're missing out. And, that's karma. That kind of stuff goes out into the world and, they'll get their turn. And I feel bad for them about when they realize and go, I didn't know. But here with all of us, let's try to know better. Let's try to do better. Which brings me to our amazing guest that we're going to be joined in just a second by Shain Neumeier. Shain had a lot of stuff and even a call to action for all of us that I hope that we'll all heed. But before we bring them in, we want you to take a look at this and then we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm so excited because our guest is joining us for the first time on Autism Live. Shain Neumeier is an autistic attorney and advocate. As a person with multiple disabilities and a survivor of forced treatment, they have focused their efforts on ensuring that other people in their community be able to exercise their rights to boldly autonomy, I think, as well as freedom from institutional confinement and abuse. Shain has also been advocating for an end to the use of aversive interventions, such as that of electric shock as a form of behavior modification at the Judge Rotenburg Center for over 15 years, which we are most certainly going to talk about. When not working, Shain enjoys crafting, playing Dungeons and Dragons, listening to history podcasts. I can't wait to hear about that. And watching science fiction shows with their partner of four feline roommates. 4 feline roommates. That's a lot. Shain, welcome to Autism Live.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited about getting a chance to talk to you. I've hoped for you to be on the show for a long time, and I was really thrilled and honored when you said that you would be willing to come on and talk with us. I really want to, I know we want to talk a lot about your work and the kinds of things that you have been doing in your work. I mean, my goodness, you are an attorney. I would love to hear what made you want to become an attorney.
Honestly, I had heard from a young age that I should be an attorney. You should be an attorney. You argue so much with everything. And when it came down to it, it's like, I have these skills, writing, speaking in public, research, I can do this. And frankly, it was also a way to wait out the Great Recession. That didn't quite work out, but I tried. I actually had a very good experience in law school and then dealt with several years of underemployment, and during which I was still doing advocacy work. But it took a while until I got to do some legit lawyer work in disability rights.
Well, I'm grateful for the work that you have done. I want to talk particularly about what you are referring to as torture in the name of treatment, certainly ending aversive interventions, particularly the use of electric shock. And I know we're going to talk about the Judge Rotenburg Center. For people who are tuning in and don't know anything about the Judge Rotenburg Center, help them to understand what is going on and what you are calling out to change.
So the Judge Rotenburg Center, just to give you a little background, is a facility in about 20, 30 minutes south of Boston. It used to be in Rhode Island, but Rhode Island kind of kicked them out. And the reason why they kicked them out is because they've used aversive interventions, sometimes very severe ones like electric shock, as a means of behavioral modification. Back in the day, before about 1985, they were primarily using other forms of aversives, such as breaking ammonia pills under people's noses, spraying them, taking an object to the bottom of their feet to basically spank the bottom of their feet, and a lot of restraint. They still engage in quite a bit of restraint. I represented a family whose daughter had been at the facility for approximately 90 days, and during that time, she was restrained 46 times. This woman was not even on the electric shock device because at the time, new people were not allowed to undergo this as per Massachusetts state regulations. The unfortunate part of this is that the state law or the state regulation in Massachusetts that would have banned further aversives on new admits got struck down by our highest court in Massachusetts, the Supreme Judicial Court, last year. They have now kicked it over to the legislature in Massachusetts to fix this if they want to. They left the door open, but for decades now, the Massachusetts legislature has not wanted to actually pass anything that would deal with this. And meanwhile, the Food and Drug Administration, it's in their court now because they're passing their second ban of electric shock devices as a means of behavioral modification. Mind you, not naming JRC, but everybody knows who we're talking about.
Right.
And they are in the process of getting comments for that regulation. And if that were to go through, the JRC, Judge Rotenburg Center, would be precluded from using it on anybody whenever they came into the facility. And right now, the comment period is ongoing. There is less than 30 days to submit comments, but if you want to look up FDA regulations about electric shock devices, you will probably find a way to submit comments, which I highly recommend everybody watching this do.
Okay, so wait a second. Where do we need to go to say this?
The Food and Drug Administration, if you Google them and electric shock ban, you will come to either the site itself or other sites that will link to it so you can submit comments in support of the ban.
Okay, because I have to be honest with you, I remember years ago, I think it was 60 Minutes that did an expose, and I remember being absolutely horrified and crying for days. And I'm almost positive that was before I had a loved one that was on the spectrum. And I certainly, I think sometimes I walk around in a cloud of ignorance because it was so shocking. And I don't mean that as a pun. It was so horrifying. Yeah. It was so disturbing to me that I could not imagine how that kind of a thing could be allowed. We certainly have seen over the years that people have spoken up. Why do you think, Shane, this is still a thing? Who is supporting this?
First of all, they had a lot of support in the legislature for many years, who was actually the uncle of a JRC student. Interesting story there on the legislature floor. Middle-aged man now, his father said that he would rather shoot his son than see him come off of aversives. The other thing is JRC is incredibly litigious. Not only do they get an order from the court to allow them to use aversives in every case where electric shock will be used, but they have sued the state and the federal government for trying to intervene with their practices, and especially to prevent electric shock and other aversives. There's also what in the autistic community, the advocacy community, is called the presumption of benevolence, which I would describe as if it's done in the name of treatment or services or other things that are meant to address autistic behaviors or autistic how we exist in the world, even if it's meant to cure or treat that or mitigate it in the eyes of neurotypicals, almost anything can be excused. If it's treatment, then it can't be torture because it's for their own good. And this belief is prevalent, not just among JRC supporters, but in the larger community where autistic people are treated more as things to be controlled than people who deserve rights and deserve to be who they are.
There's a lot to talk about here, but I want to say that it's important for all of us to be good students. And one of the things that I say on the show all the time is that I want to be a student in the front row, raising my hand on a regular basis, and I want to be a good ally. I think to be a parent and be anything other than that is unthinkable to me. But it doesn't mean that I always get it right. Right? But I have to constantly be learning. And that's part of the reason why I wanted you to be here, Shane, to talk with us about this, because what I'm hearing, I know a lot of parents. I've met a lot of parents on this journey, and I don't know a single parent who supports this, and would support it. And the fact that what I hear from you is that it feels like in your life that you've met a lot of parents who do.
I have, we've been part of the applied behavioral analysis boards, in which there's a lot of discussion over whether behavioral modification should even be used on autistic people as like a routine thing. What the aim of this or other treatments are. Are they meant to fix us? Are they meant to make our lives easier on our terms, or anything along that continuum? So that is a big part of that, and similar kind of restraint and seclusion, same deal. All of these things done in the name of treatment or education or under the surface control are things that, unfortunately, as an advocate, I've seen a lot of, both in autistic advocacy and in civil commitment proceedings, which I represent people in for my regular job.
Yeah.
And sorry.
No. I want to hear from you. You go ahead.
Of course. My personal experience has also been similar. To be a little bit dramatic about it, I was a guinea pig, both medically and psychologically as a kid. I was put through 4 surgeries because, as you can see, I have craniofacial things, and the opinion of people around me, both my parents and otherwise, is this had to be fixed, no matter how many times they broke my jaw in the process. I thankfully said no, and that was in retrospect, a very good decision, because I would have just been taking shots in the dark at my own jaw and health. And the other thing was, I was put on 6 antipsychotics, 12 psychiatric medications, starting with the antipsychotic risperidone, starting at the age of 9. And they gave me any number of side effects, from, being tired all the time to having a seizure at one point, grand mal seizures. So I do have some axe to grind against forced treatment and forced approaches to disability in general that don't respect the autonomy and well-being of the autistic or otherwise disabled person.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Shane. I'm so sorry that that's how you started. I love that that's not where you finished. And I respect that. I want you to know that here at the Autism Network, we are very committed to anything that is being done with an individual on the autism spectrum has to be fair. I mean, those are the terms that we put things in. I'm a huge proponent of education, but I suspect that there are some things that you and I would not agree on. And I want to say that I respect your opinion about all of this. And as I said, I want to be a really good student. But, we're not for anything that is not for the direct benefit of the individual and takes their sensory and personal feelings into consideration. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer to you so that you know where I'm coming from. But our jargon term of the day today was ableism. And I might have a Pollyanna kind of thought to everything, but my feeling is that none of us wake up in the morning and say, oh, I know, I want to go out into the world and I want to think of things ableistic today. But a lot of us do.
I think it's not malicious, going back to my craniofacial stuff, because it's part of me, or part of my history and where I'm coming from. A lot of people don't mean any harm when they say, what happened to your face? Or have you ever considered getting surgery for that? Or usually I am not openly autistic at my job, but if somebody makes a loud noise, I'm going to hit the floor at times. So, and some people don't understand that. Some people have made loud noises over the course of my history just to upset me. And that is malicious. But I think there's a continuum from, innocent but hurtful comments to actual bullying and abuse, which happens much more frequently, whether it's bullying, whether it's child abuse in the home, whether it's teachers and service providers who are intentionally or unintentionally doing things that will provoke the autistic person. Where was I going with this? Again, it's a continuum of ableism and ableist thoughts and ableist actions.
So what can you tell all of us that are watching? And we have a pretty wide audience, both individuals on the spectrum and parents and professionals. What would you say to all of us for those moments when somebody points out to us that we're being ableist, or when we catch ourselves being ableist? How can we move from that space to being more supportive and being good allies?
So one thing I would suggest is reading the work of autistic advocates. Some of them are attorneys, a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are speaking from their own experience, and some are doing a more theoretical approach and some kind of blend the two, where they're talking about both their experience and kind of problems in general affecting us. Really, there's a phrase in a disability community, nothing about us without us. And a lot of that involves, in this case, realizing a mistake and looking into it, seeing it from our perspective, first and foremost. And from there, if you're still struggling, if you're realizing that you did something that is wrong or it's been pointed out to you, to try to do better based on what you find out, either through talking to people or doing your own research of perspectives people have shared.
Yeah. I always say I have a dear friend, you may know, Alex Plank, and Alex's favorite thing to do is to tell me when I'm being when my thinking is ableist. And, but it's turned into, sometimes I say to him, you got to be careful with this because I take it so seriously, but occasionally he's kidding me. He's like, no, what's ableist about that? Why are you so paranoid? I'm like, but because I'm trying to learn what I don't know. I grew up in a household where my mother was born with both feet clubfoot, both feet backwards. And so I saw on a daily basis because this was before ADA, and that there were places that we would go and my mom couldn't go in, and I can remember my friends going, "Why aren't you coming in?" And with no concept of understanding that not everybody could walk up those stairs. So and I remember how hurtful it was when people weren't taking that into consideration.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't want to be that. But I appreciate it when he does tell me if I've done or said something that is not, inclusive, that is not what it needs to be. But on behalf of all of us, Shane, I don't know why anybody would ever feel like they thought it was appropriate to talk to you about anything about you, let alone your beautiful face.
Thank you. I think a lot of people are concerned or doing what some advocates, including myself, have called concern trolling, where they say they want to be supportive, but it's kind of bullying. They'll say, well, I'm just concerned about you and I want the best for you. And what they're doing is essentially undermining somebody's self-worth and feeling of belonging.
Yes. And we need to all start to recognize and call that out whenever we can. And as Shane said, we need to change our behavior. Okay. In your talking points, you said one of the things you want to talk about is Not in My Name, how transphobes weaponize autism in the culture wars and how it hurts autistic people, trans and otherwise. Okay, you got to help me here because I don't know what it is that you're talking about, but I want to know.
So the first thing is there's been studies that show that there's an outsized or disproportionate crossover between trans and autistic people.
Sure, we've covered that on the show, absolutely.
And meanwhile, the right-wing or transphobic people of any political stripe have co-opted this to say, oh, they're convincing autistic people that they're trans and exploiting them and all. This is also a form of ableism because it says that you don't have capacity to make decisions about your medical things or even your own identity. And furthermore, it relies on both an ableist and a sexist trope of autistic people having extreme male brains. That's MALE, like being autistic means that you're systemizing, and that is inherently a masculine trait. And this has been used, maybe not, they're not reading the original sources that use this terminology, but they're going off of this idea that autistic women in particular are vulnerable to being convinced that they are transmasculine or non-binary and undergoing medical treatment that such people believe that we cannot make decisions on or understand. This includes everybody from J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, to Milo Yiannopoulos, the famous right-wing troll. So unfortunately, this has picked up some traction as far as the public transphobe narratives.
And you're saying that they're weaponizing autism, and the people that you named, are they also, I know that things have been said, but I didn't realize things had been said about autism and trans by those people. Are you saying that J.K. Rowling has said something about autism and being trans?
Yes, and in fact, the Autism Women and Non-Binary Networks released a public statement condemning her statements. It's not just about autism, but about the entire things too. The entire open letter that Rowling published. But the autism thing was particularly important, especially in that context where the AWN is specifically for autistic women and non-binary people. And here this person is saying that autistic people assigned female at birth cannot make their own decisions about who they are.
I just am feeling very uneducated. I need to go and read that because I had not heard that before. I find, I'm always trying to understand how everybody thinks. This is beyond me. I don't understand this at all. I don't understand why anybody cares at all how you think of yourself and how you react to the world. And I don't know if I'm being a child here, but I don't understand how it affects them. Why should they care?
I don't think that it does affect them. I think part of it is, where was I going with this? Part of it is just bullying on the part of trolls. They don't like anybody who's different, including autistic people, including trans people. And there are some people who, again, do the concern trolling thing of, we just care so much about you. We don't want you to be exploited. And it's really a fear of people who are different, of things changing in the world as far as how we perceive gender and identity. And the reason I call this not in my name is, as a non-binary autistic person, I don't want them using me to prop up their own hatred.
Good heavens, no. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but it seems like to me, whenever somebody is protesting that loud about what somebody else is doing, it's often because they are not comfortable with themselves, and that they really should be looking to themselves instead of bullying other people. Maybe that's just me.
Quite possibly. I do think that abusers and bullies often lack self-awareness, which, if they had it, would lead to them feeling intense, crushing shame. So they can't allow themselves to feel that, to be aware of what they're doing and how it affects people, because that would be too hard on their ego.
Well, I think you're right. They should be feeling shame if they could feel shame.
Yeah.
So let's talk about autonomy and support and about what we need to make the world be so that somebody can have free choice, But in the same space, I think this is a hard concept for some people, that you can have total autonomy, but also still need support.
Of course. And we see this especially with autistic adults who, post special education or post turning 18, if they didn't have special education, as the metaphor goes, they fall off the cliff. They don't have, even if they are highly educated, if they thrive in work or ADLs, probably not all of this at once. Because I don't know if you know the spoon theory of disability, but this idea that you have finite resources within yourself to do all your tasks, or you only have so many spoons, as it were, to do the things you need to do, that at some point, if you're disabled, you're going to not have the resources internally even to do what you need to do to do all the things in your life that are considered normal people are able to do. And so if you have a person, for instance, who is non-speaking, who is not going to college or even graduating, who is seen as needing services for all their lives, they might not be taken seriously at all for purposes of autonomy, of living the life they want to, because people see them as the R-slur. I don't want to say it fully, but I hope the audience knows what I mean. And on the other hand, we have people who are what used to be called high functioning, people who speak like or almost like neurotypicals, people who can go to and even succeed in school, people who can have a regular job, and not being sent to a sheltered workshop or anything like that, which is not necessary at this point at all, but that's a different story. And what we could have instead is a universal system of supports, not just in school for people who need it, but people who are adults as well. This is where we get into things like universal health care, which I strongly believe in, and Medicaid for all, such that people could get services and supports in the community that they currently can't if they don't qualify by this extremely narrow criteria that we have now for means testing or for who gets supports and who doesn't. Yeah. For instance, I have a job as an attorney. I went to school for it. I sometimes pass. It's a bit complicated also because of how I look. People assume sometimes, but generally I'm considered among the people who don't need support. I also know somebody who doesn't have a job, who didn't finish college, who can't take care of their ADLs by no fault of their own, and they have very little autonomy because of both the restrictions on poor people. Unfortunately, SSI and SSDI are poverty traps at this point that keep people from working, and this person also feels like they have no control. The service plan team is deciding everything for them and doesn't listen to them. And what their goals are and what they need and how long it would take them rather than the average person. So there's using these two people, myself and the person I'm going to keep anonymous, yeah. There's this gap between people getting everything they need. And I don't think that needs to exist. We currently conceptualize it as you're either too disabled to function or you're so disabled, you're so passing as neurotypical or able-bodied that you don't need anything. And this is a false dichotomy. Service providers, bureaucrats, agencies need to realize this and act accordingly.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I want to ask you a couple of questions, and if you feel at any time that you're like, I don't want to talk about that, feel free to.
Understood.
But since I've got you here, I'd love to know, because there's quite a schism, I think, in our community between parents of young kids on the spectrum and some, but not all of the self-advocates that are out there in the world. And there's some confusion. Now, I'm 100% with you that I don't want anyone to be tortured ever. And I don't want anybody to be forced into doing something. That's not ever what I want. But I'm big on education. Absolutely big on education. And I know that we're going to have some parents who are going to write in and say forced treatment, and they're going to be a little confused about what you mean by that. So, and I said earlier, we may not agree on everything, but I respect your opinion. If we can talk about ABA for a second, because I certainly have seen things in the world of ABA, and I've talked to enough adults on the spectrum that had things happen to them when they were having ABA that were traumatic. Like, I never, ever, ever want to disavow that. But I personally have had a different experience and I viewed like all of it, where I personally would never allow my child to be traumatized. I know that I talk to some self-advocates and they're like, but the very nature of ABA is traumatizing. And my question always is that true? Because if we're educating in some of the different ways that we educate, you could have it be traumatic. It doesn't have to be traumatic. I look at you, Shane, and you're this amazing person with an amazing intellect, and you're able to go to college and look at you, you're a successful attorney. And you got there somehow. I hope it wasn't you got there from being tortured. I want to know, what are your thoughts on how do we educate young people on the spectrum so that they have their best opportunity to do what's important to them?
With any kind of treatment modality, it's less to me what you call it and more two things: what your aims are and what means are you to accomplish these aims. Are you looking for compliance? Because that's quite different than building skills that a kid wants to develop, or a young person of any age, or an older person for that matter. Yeah. Do they want to, learn to make eye contact? Is that the most important thing? Or are they really interested in dinosaurs and they want to learn everything about that? Can you teach them to read? Can you teach them about career options that will later allow them to engage in the special interests, whether it's paleontology or research? What is the aim here and on whose terms? The other thing is what's being done to accomplish these aims, whether it's a good reason or a bad reason, what is being done here. And if it's collaborative with the person, if it doesn't push past their boundaries, if it is seeing a person as a person rather than a thing to be fixed, then that is fine and good. And that's how it's supposed to be done. But if it's, some of the horror stories I've heard are things like anything from taking away somebody's comfort object as a means of incentivizing them to get it back if they comply, to having a kid be forced to eat something that they have an aversion to, throwing up and being made to sit in their own vomit as a natural consequence for their behavior, quote unquote.
Well, so far we're exactly on the same page, Shane. You and I have no quarrel. My further question, though, is let's go back to the compliance thing, because I agree with you. But here's my asterisk that I want to ask you about. If we're teaching compliance in, for instance, having a child respond to when we say stop because they run towards the cars, that's the kind of compliance that we're trying to get them to do, is to learn if we yell stop, you don't keep running out into the street.
Right.
Where are you on that?
That makes sense, especially if somebody is very young. I think it still makes sense, though, to consider how you're getting to stop, meaning stop. Are you, putting your hands on them and shaking them, saying, I thought I told you to stop? And I'm not saying you as in you personally, but generally you. That's a lot of difference between saying, honey, I don't want you to get hurt. Please stay out of the road. Or taking their hand and pulling them back. That's a proper way to do safety things. It's, some kids might not like being touched, but as I had a relationship at one point and the person told me, I know you will hate this, but if you're about to be hit by a truck, I'm going to pull you back away from that. And I understood that. And I think that's a valid approach, the same kind of way that, I don't know why this seems connected, but it does. The same kind of way that if you found somebody and you're a doctor who's passed out on the street, even if they might be a Jehovah's Witness or a Christian Scientist, you saved their life because that's the priority right now. And they don't have the ability to consent to anything else. So do what you can with the most limited forms of intervention to the closer it is to safety, the more kind of wiggle room there is, but far from the kinds of things that are done that I've mentioned.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
No. I'm just agreeing with you. I said absolutely. I'm still in complete agreement, Shane.
So I think it's combining the risk with the least restrictive means is the jargony way to say it, or the least you have to do to keep somebody safe in a dire situation.
Absolutely. I'm going to use my son as an example that because he ran for the streets. And one of the things that we did was that we went to a place where there wasn't a street. We went to a track. He loved running. And what we would do is we would practice running and somebody would say, stop. And then when he would stop, we all cheered.
That sounds like Simon Says,
right, exactly. But so first he was learning, okay, that when you listen to somebody say stop, because he was pre-verbal. This was when he had no language and wasn't being able to decode a lot expressively. So we were teaching him language, but he would stop and then we would all be like, great job. And then we would go again and we made it a game. So he learned when we say stop, that this is what it means. You physically, your body, nobody put a hand on him. We just, and Dad and I ran alongside him and we stopped too and froze where we were. And then side by side with that, he was taught, safety things about when you go to a street and that we always stop and we look both ways. And no one ever put their hands on him or punished him. But he was always given praise for when he complied, but it is compliance that we don't step off the curb until we've looked both ways. So,
and I think that makes sense for, we teach young people generally the same thing of any age. And I think that that's fair. It's not ableist to be applying that generally. I mean, if you are, and again, this is generally you, if you're shaming somebody, and I got told when I was a kid, that is the stupidest thing I have ever seen you do. That is you don't do that to any child, disabled or not. And, trying to find things for, autistic people is much the same as finding things for everybody else, which I wish people understood more is we're not aliens. We might have thought, I had a whole group of friends when I was growing up who thought we were misplaced aliens, but we grew up and we know we're not. And I would wish that other people would understand that we're still people and we operate according to human ways of understanding and experiencing emotion, that we are still emotional creatures and we experience pain, which was up till recently apparently a controversial opinion, at least according to a certain member of the FDA who opened the presentation back in 2014 about the proposed rules.
Well, Shane, I mean this sincerely. I'm not kidding around here. I really want to be part of the change and help parents to know that they need to be letting the FDA know how we feel about using shock on children and teens and adults on the spectrum.
I think it's a very valuable perspective, and one that, frankly, the FDA will take at least as seriously, if not more, than self-advocates.
Well, so that bums me out.
What do you say?
I said that bums me out. They should be listening to you guys more than they should be listening to us. But if they will listen to us, I'd like to be urging more parents that we need to speak up.
Oh, definitely. And if you know any providers, that's probably going to be the best option, because this is largely a scientific question in the mind of the FDA. Is this effective? Is it, what are the results of it medically speaking? Things like that. It's less of a question of the heart and more of the question of the data.
But how is that? When over a year ago, what is it called? The BACB took a vote among their membership. These are all professionals who are board certified behavior analysts, and they asked about this question about aversives, not even about electroshock, but about aversives in general, if they felt that it should be included in their bylaws to use ever. And overwhelmingly, they voted no. So
that's a nice change.
How is the FDA shaky on this?
I don't honestly, and I'm not in their brain, but because the first ban got struck down by the courts and they're redoing this, I get the sense that unless JRC overwhelms them with statements and comments and such, that we're in a pretty good place to get this regulation passed. The FDA wants to do it, but they basically want to do it the right way so that the courts won't strike it down again, and it looks and is a legitimate through both process and substance.
Okay, well, I've got my work cut out for me. I'm going to Google and find, because we're pre-taping this show, I'm going to Google and find the exact place where you guys need to go to find the comment, and I'm going to make sure that it gets in the notes of the show. If you're watching this right now, there's a place either in the description or in the comments that's a link that I'm going to go find between now and then so that everybody can go and comment. This is about our community. These could be our kids. And if our voice is what's needed to stand up and say, this is preposterous, this is inhuman, this is not okay, then we just need to do it, you guys. We need to stand up for our kids and for all the kids that aren't our kids and all the adults as well.
Right. A lot of the people there have been there for decades. There are people who were literal children when they came in, who are now middle-aged people, who have sometimes been on the shock for that entire time, including that again, not young now, but that man who was the nephew of the state representative has been there since at least the 80s.
This representative, I don't know who it is, but I want to find out. This representative who said that they said they would rather shoot.
That was his brother, the father of the man. And this was from an article that was published in 2008. And another link you could go on, and this can be cut out if you want, is the Autistic Hoya Judge Rotenburg Center Living Archive, which has videos. It has links to essays, news stories, the JRC's own writings, and it's hundreds of links now. So if this is something that you want to take a deeper dive on, as I did when I first became aware of this, then I would definitely check that out.
I know I cannot, because I can never get the images out of my head from what I have seen before. But if any of you are in doubt of anything that Shane is talking about, please feel free to visit that for yourselves. But I think sometimes the question is so simple. Anyway, the answer is that for me, like, why would we allow that for anyone? Why would we allow that for anyone? We don't allow that in our schools. The schools say if somebody has done something, no matter what it is, if it is directly related to their disability, that we cannot, you can expel them for 10 days and then figure out what's the best way to proceed for that individual. But you can't kick them out forever. And you certainly can't do shock therapy on them. I mean, why would we have a different set of rules? I don't even like that they can expel them for 10 days. But I think sometimes it takes everybody 10 days to figure out what's the best way to proceed forward. But if someone has a disability, why would we ever, as a society, allow them to be tortured?
It comes down to ableism, our word of the day, and the dehumanization of autistic people. I will give an example. From the facility director himself, he wrote a piece, not a piece, excuse me. He gave an interview in which he told the interviewer about an interaction he had with his mentor, the original B.F. Skinner of Skinnerism behavioral approach. And Skinner is known to, at the end, at least come out against subversives, but the JRC director at the time, Matthew Israel, had said that upon seeing JRC students, he said, "Oh, I had no idea. These aren't people. These are animals." Oh. And I think that idea of autistic people being uncontrollable and unable to be reached as people allows for a lot of excuses of, well, what else can we do? How else do we reach them? And it barely hurts anyways, is what they say. But people who have tested it out say otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. There comes a point, ignorance is one thing, but now we are all less ignorant because Shane has filled us in. And so now it's up to us to take action. So I'm taking that personally, Shane.
Thank you.
And we'll act accordingly, and we'll use the megaphone here to let people know. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I am also shocked because you didn't say anything that I didn't agree with, and I hope that you'll tell me if I said anything that you disagree with.
I can't think of anything, to be honest.
Well, but and it's okay. We don't all have to agree all the time. But I think if we all stay in the place of understanding, one of the things we start every show with, Shane, is that we say everything we do here is at Autism Media Network is for information and inspiration. And that's for that larger autism community, which starts with people who are themselves on the autism spectrum, but it includes everyone who loves them. And that's really the space that we are always coming from, is that if you care about these individuals on the spectrum, then we would never, ever harm them. Like
you would hope that, yeah.
Well, I think I know a bunch of parents, and we just need to be louder, you guys. We need to be louder about this because apparently, this as much as it's to us, apparently it's not legally on the books. Let's carry it across the line. Let's help our kids and kids like our kids and teens and adults like our teens and adults and make this happen. So that's my plea to everybody. I'm going to make sure that the link is going to be in the description. Shane, thank you so much. I hope you'll come back sometime.
I'd be glad to. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I know you're a busy attorney. You've got lots of work to do.
Oh boy. Today was a down day. The rest of the week will not be.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. And I've been glad to be on. So have a good night, everybody.
You too. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, that certainly was an education, was it not? And what an amazing conversation to have. I want to tell you a little bit about the rest of this week. So tomorrow, for the Best of Autism Live, we are having Abby and Christine Romeo, the episode that we did with them a couple of weeks ago. You know Abby and Christine from the hit Netflix show Love on the Spectrum. Abby's going to talk with us about her hats and We have a great conversation about unicorns, and I love Abby advocates for herself. There's just, I think, a really wonderful moment when Abby in the interview advocates for herself. It was just a very powerful moment for me. So I hope you'll tune in and watch that. And then I'm just looking, Chris made me a cue card, but I'm half blind. So on Ask Dr. Doreen, we're talking about 3 things and how they may interrelate or may not. About anxiety, autism, and ODD. ODD is a diagnosis we're seeing a upsurge of, and you'll really want to hear Dr. Grampiche's thoughts on this, on why ODD. It's a troublesome diagnosis, and it requires you to dig a little deeper to see if that actually is the diagnosis that you want your loved one to be saddled with. So there we go. But we will talk about anxiety, because anxiety is a very important piece. And it's important to be aware of that. We all have anxiety, and it's not fun. Yeah. So tune in for that as well. We're so excited to finish out the month of May so strong. I am also excited because, it's, then we're into June. And my son's going to turn 21. Somebody tell me, how did that happen? That is just amazing. My son was 7 when we started this show. That's crazy. That's crazy right there. Let's just stop there. That's full on crazy. But time hurries on, as they say. So he's going to be 21 in every sense of the word. So we'll look forward to talking to you guys about that. In any case, thank you for being with us today. I so much to do. I'm going to get you guys that link. Make sure that you write and say what your thoughts are on this. Let's not leave people alone with this to make decisions without your opinion being heard, even if you disagree with me. Okay. All right. So tune in tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.